People spend so much time online shopping. So it's like, why wouldn't you be able to do that for an apartment?
Hello, and welcome to Sink or Swim, a bi-weekly podcast brought to you by RentSync, where we provide an insider's look into the prop tech, multifamily, and rental housing industry. In each episode, we take a deep dive into the technologies and strategies that have helped companies overcome operational challenges and increase the value of their multifamily investments. So, without further delay, let's get into today's discussion.
Welcome back to Sink or Swim. I'm Mitch Fanning with RentSync, formerly LWS. And joining me today is Lauren Popadiuk, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications for RoundSquare, a real estate development firm in Calgary known for building affordable yet inspired spaces for those who dread the daily crawl out of the burbs. Lauren, how you doing today?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. I know there's a lot going on. It's actually November 4th. We're recording this, so there's a lot going on in the world. But I have to ask this first. So I was doing some prep, and as a marketer myself, I love the way you guys describe what you guys do. But in your own words, I have to ask, what does the phrase "dread the daily crawl out of the burbs"? What does that actually mean to you? Like, why that statement?
Well, I think that that's sort of like a broader conversation just around, like, we're very pro-density, which I'll probably get into a little bit later. But yeah, so basically the crawl, like, you're living out in the burbs. There's so many new communities built up around Calgary. And people end up being in the car for an hour commuting. Obviously, it's different now with COVID. But so I guess like kind of what RoundSquare does, we're an inner city developer. So basically, we're very pro-density, and we believe that the best thing for the environment is to have people living in the inner city core, living in places where they're a little bit lower maintenance, more flexibility, sort of more freedom. We believe that kind of leads to a more balanced lifestyle for people. It also promotes more walking, biking, and then supporting the local small business ecosystem. So kind of with that in mind, that's sort of actually what we do. That's the ethos on which we develop a lot of our projects.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record, but I have to say that if I lived in Calgary and I was looking to rent or lease a place, I think I would choose, or at least shortlist, RoundSquare as an option. The way your places have been designed and the architecture is quite amazing, and I'm actually referring specifically to, I think it's Courtyard 33, which I'll actually put in the show notes. It's quite amazing.
Thanks. That's a huge compliment. Courtyard is a great project. You can look at our website to find out more information and see kind of the photos of it, but it's built around a courtyard, and then it has a stop-skip corridor. So a lot of the units are actually, you go up a set of stairs, so it feels almost lofted. So it's sort of a European style of development. And then the courtyard basically has access to all of the small businesses on the second floor. It's an open pedestrian realm. So everyone hanging out in Marda Loop can come and actually visit and spend time on the courtyard. And then there's apartments that actually face into the courtyard. There's a huge public art mural done by, she hasn't started yet, but it will be done soon, by Katie Green, who's a local mural artist, a really amazing artist. It has a lot of features that I think make it just an incredible place to live. I've thought about living there myself. It's been ongoing for a long time. I really love that project. So that's really awesome that you pointed that out.
Yeah, it's definitely unique. And again, I'm going to put it in the show notes. And for anyone who's listening, I would definitely recommend they check it out, just because it's just a really cool design. Now, like me, I personally don't come from a multi-family or a real estate background. And I noticed, actually, again, when I was doing some preparation, that your background is in marketing. You actually co-founded or co-led a digital marketing agency previous to RoundSquare. So tell me a little bit about how you actually got started in the real estate industry specifically.
So I was born into real estate.
Wow.
Um, I think I was born networking. My dad was a builder, so he did a lot of custom homes in the area that I grew up. So a lot of my childhood was actually spent on site. And it was so close, like a lot of the places he's building, 2 blocks away from our house. So we'd just walk over and go and see dad at site. So, I mean, that was a huge part of our life. And then interestingly enough, my parents' hobby was also real estate. So looking back, I'm really thankful that they did this, but at the time it was just like horrible. Our sort of family things, like you go to a swimming lesson and then you get in the car and you'd go and drive around and look at real estate, go to open houses. Then my dad would quiz you on like, okay, what's the first thing that you do if you're interested in buying this house? And then you like list up
Yeah.
Get the house inspection. We're like 6. So then it's super funny. And then, so he did that for a long time. And then he basically, from when I think I was 7, he said, okay, you're going to work in sales and marketing and real estate. And I was like, whatever, like, I don't know. I want to be a dentist. I used to like bend paper clips to be fake retainers. Like I had all these other ideas for my life. And so then, yeah, basically I just kind of rebelled against that. Like, everyone kind of goes, oh, dad, whatever. So then I ended up doing psychology. And then I moved to Vancouver and found this design program. So it was actually sort of 2 streams. You had a foundation year, but it was interior design, graphic design. So I switched from psychology and did that and then graduated. So that kind of sparked my working at design agencies and things like that. So I ended up doing like a lot of Marcom jobs and then going into the agency world and then eventually founding my own agency, which is still running today. So the really interesting thing about that is that I actually left, like I quit my agency to work for RoundSquare. They were one of our kind of main clients or accounts that I worked on. And I just developed this really, really close relationship with the founder, like a really cool creative relationship. I loved what they were doing. I just felt like at the time when we started the agency, I was quite young. And so, you don't really know what these things are going to turn into. And it just felt like a better move for me, honestly, to just go and pursue working at RoundSquare. So I actually did that, which was like a big life change. And I really have it was the best decision I could have made for myself. I just think that everything that they're doing is just so aligned with my values personally. I love the project that we're working on, and just sort of like the 2 founders, which I can kind of get into later, but they just, what they're doing and how they see the world and how they envision a better future for Canadian cities is just like unparalleled. And so working for people like that every day, it's like you just jump out of bed.
It's interesting. I also kind of was on the agency side of marketing, and the last client I co-ran an agency. The last client I had was in kind of the tech space, and really found myself wanting to be an operator in the company that was kind of I was working with. And so that's kind of what led me to kind of being on the operator side versus the agency side. Now, obviously, like you mentioned, you bought into their vision. It almost feels like, based on your background, marketing, design, psychology, that RoundSquare was almost like the perfect fit. What
Yeah.
what is the, like? Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite project right now that you can speak to, and why?
I mean, I kind of love all of them. They're sort of like having kids. They're all great in their own way. But in my case, it would be dogs. I don't have children. I think, yeah, I mean, I love the General Block, which is a commercial building that we're doing. It's actually only 2 stories in Bridgeland, but it has these awesome local tenants that are kind of like Calgary favorites, Una, Phil and Sebastian, and Village Ice Cream. So that spot will be just an amazing hub for meeting people, collaborating. So I'm really excited about that one. And then I actually love all the towns. So we're kind of, we've moved, we originally started doing townhomes, and then we're sort of doing these mixed use buildings, which are sort of 6 stories. So I always kind of have like a sweet spot for the towns. I just love the design of them. And I feel like we've really done a good job of creating community in those buildings. I'm excited to sort of see, like, Courtyard will be our kind of first large project. So it's sort of a different experience, still a learning experience, honestly. And then I always get excited about the future projects. Like, we're doing a building in Winnipeg, which we call 90 Alexander. I'm so excited about that because it's basically restoring a heritage building, and then our building will be built around that. So it's really, really beautiful. I actually was born in Winnipeg, and
Okay.
I've only been back once since I moved to Calgary at we were 9 months old. I always say that, and they're like, I moved to Calgary with like a tiny little suitcase, but I was a baby. So I'm excited to spend more time there and kind of sort of see my roots and get to know that area, and sort of, starting to collaborate with some of the local businesses there already. Just really cool stuff going on in that city. I'm just super excited to kind of join their community. So I guess that's sort of what I'm most excited about.
So given the current kind of market conditions that we're seeing, I'm sure you're seeing as well, where you're seeing a lot of, due to maybe COVID, primarily due to COVID, there's this kind of migration from urban to secondary markets. And the fact that, Courtyard 33, and you mentioned kind of going to market or expanding into to Winnipeg, like you guys seem to be, your marketing and lease up efforts seem to be on point. Even your Instagram following is like 13,000, which I think is very rare for this kind of industry. What is RoundSquare doing differently to stand out when it comes to their marketing and lease up efforts?
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the main thing, kind of like the foundation of it all, is that we just don't follow any trends in real estate. Like, I don't really, I obviously follow like pricing comps and sort of that information. But as far as like from a brand perspective, the brands that I am sort of taking inspiration from are more fashion brands, artists, that kind of, instead of sort of seeing what our competitors are doing. Like, I don't really know, honestly, too much about it, because I spend time sort of researching like a lot of design blogs and things that are going on in the UK. And I think I can say the same for Afshin and Al, who are the co-founders of RoundSquare as well. Like, that they're sneakerheads. So I think that's like a huge component of it, is that we're building this company. It's sort of like, yes, we work in development and real estate, but we're sort of, following inspiration from completely different places that have nothing to do with our real estate industry. So I think that's sort of why it's a little bit different. Like, we used to always say, which I think was a huge mistake in the early days. I've worked on this like with RoundSquare for a long time. Obviously, because they were a client of the agency, so pretty early days. We used to kind of write copy saying like, "Oh, we build community," and I actually think now, looking back, like, that's totally false. Communities are built because people are rallying around an idea on their own, from their own free will. Mm-hmm. Like, if you think about brands like Supreme, they have these sneaker drops, or they drop like every Thursday, they drop new products, and people are lined up around the block, right? Or waiting online to sort of buy this product. And that's, yes, they have great marketing and really kind of neat products, but also it's, people have rallied around their idea. So I think that's sort of where what's shifted a lot for me in how I approach the marketing is, I just sort of think like, how do we create the best possible product and then put that out there, collaborate with other like-minded brands that are in completely different industries to us. So we have a partnership program, which has been really awesome to just connect with local businesses and sort of help support them, and just sort of cross-promote, because we have a lot of sort of aligned brand values and sort of aligned customer demographics. So that's worked out really well for us. So I think it's just sort of a flipping it on its head. Like even something that I'm working on is how for rental, like normally you would post it on, Rent Faster or these kind of like apps that are outside of your website. How do you create almost like an e-commerce experience on your website for rental? Like, people spend so much time online shopping. So it's like, why wouldn't you be able to do that for an apartment?
Wow.
So
I'm gonna double click into a lot of this. There's where do I begin? So first, I would say I love your approach. I also agree, and one thing I'll say, just from a personal perspective, is that I do agree that again, I come from outside of the industry, and a lot of what I've brought to RentSync is outside of that. And I think sometimes when people are like, say, if somebody would have come onto RoundSquare who had a background, and obviously you kind of grew up in it, but who didn't spend a lot of time outside of the industry, and they came in, there's this thing, what I call group think, and they kind of do the same things as other say real estate marketers, if you will. Whereas sometimes you have to look at things from a new perspective. So, and it's funny, I think, didn't you mention that when we were kind of having a conversation around email, you'd said that one of your favorite episodes of our podcast was the Disney one?
oh, I love that one. Duncan Wardell.
Yeah, Duncan
He Wordle, yeah. Well, I can tell you kind of what I loved about it. So he actually did this. He was talking about the executives going to work in the park.
Yes.
So that's something that I have sort of tried to do at all of my jobs, which I didn't even realize I was doing it, but it makes a lot of sense. So I can kind of get into that whole thing, but that's sort of going off topic. But I did help coordinate like some of the property management for the last year so that I could actually learn and be very client facing and sort of see all of their pain points, and then help improve the consumer experience that way. So I wouldn't have known a lot of those things if I actually didn't do it, which I thought was really cool that he brought that up about the Disney executives, because I think it's really critical for people who are running these companies to sort of be there on the ground floor and understand where their staff are coming from and where their customers are coming from. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to kind of mention about what you just said, the way I approach marketing in general is, first you got to nail your category, then you got to nail the brand, and then you need to create demand. Because here's how I kind of here's how I would say it. So if I asked you, Lauren, would you and your boyfriend like to go out for dinner tonight? You would say, we would say, well, what do we feel like? And I would say, well, there's a great Chinese food restaurant in Calgary. Let's go try it. That's the category. The next thing we'd probably say is, well, what are the best Chinese food restaurants in Calgary? That's the brand.
Yeah.
But if you said to me, Mitch, actually, I was looking on Facebook, there's a 2-for-1 special at this particular restaurant that we just talked about. Let's go there instead. That's demand. So,
Right.
but you need to set the context first, which is the category.
Yeah.
We can't start talking about restaurants until we say, what do we actually feel like? What category do we feel like? So I feel like you guys have really nailed your category. Like
Thanks.
you have
Wow.
a distinctive category. Now you're focused on building a brand, which again, you're looking outside of the industry. So it kind of seems like you guys are building a solid brand using kind of outside influence. And then obviously now it's demand that you guys are focused on, which again could come from, say, partnerships. So it's just really interesting to see.
Well, it's yeah, and I think honestly, like, there's nothing. I've seen a lot of kind of neat things that other real estate companies have been doing, and at certain points, like there's one that I'm kind of thinking of specifically, but I have to kind of give credit to where it's due. Like, if you I hope one day actually you'll interview our one of our co-founders, Al Karim Devani. But he's sort of honestly like a lot of the inspiration. But I think him and I think the same, where we none of this was really actually intentional. I think it was just sort of us as people and how we kind of were viewing things, and especially also our other co-founder Afshin. Like I think they've just always been like that, and I've kind of always been like that. So I think it worked out totally to our advantage. And there was a lot of hard work, tons of hard work that went into it, but I don't think that we originally set out to kind of be different or see things differently. It just sort of made sense to us based on our history and background and interest in fashion, because they're really interested in fashion as well, which is super cool. So so I think that definitely, so I always have to give kind of my props to Al and Ashen.
Yeah, you guys, I think you guys even have a fashion clothing line as well.
No, I mean, so that was actually a confusion in my conversation with someone from RentSync, but we definitely, so there actually was one, but it was my founder had actually worked on it years ago.
Oh, okay.
So that's sort of where that came from. But we're always kind of experimenting with merchandise and trying to sort of do things differently or create things that people will actually use from that perspective. And then kind of working on maybe some artist collaborations and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it could honestly just go in that direction. We'll see. You never know.
You never know. So switching gears, I mean, obviously we can't leave this conversation with talking about COVID. COVID obviously has affected a lot of businesses and people in general, but have there been any positives that you can speak of, or said another way, like have there been any beneficial changes to, say, the business RoundSquare that you made that you'll continue with in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of have to preface that question by saying, like, I don't want to underplay or downplay any of the loss that everyone has experienced, right, in answering this. But I do, there's kind of a lot of opportunity now, more than even before. And the opportunity in the way that we reframe our thinking, take a pause and kind of refocus. Like, I think for us, we sort of said, okay, because we were doing a lot of different kind of side projects. Like we were getting into co-working and all these things, which were fantastic learning experiences. But ultimately, we're developers. So we should be focusing on what we do best and kind of trying to really solidify that. And then later on, if we wanted to expand more, that would be great. So I think it helped us really refocus and reframe. And then also just sort of from a leadership perspective is taking leading with empathy really, really seriously, sort of making sure that safety is a priority for staff, that, mentally and physically, that they feel comfortable. So I think having that flexibility, sort of saying, yeah, come into the office if you want to, if you want to work from home, great, sort of letting people just lead their own decision making and have just a lot of flexibility and freedom so that they can do the best work under the circumstances, but also feel really supported by us. So, if anyone has an issue, they can always phone us, or, having lots of conversations just sort of around how do we actually care for people. So I think that was sort of, I mean, we always obviously cared a lot, but I think it just changed the conversation to be definitely leading with more empathy is pretty critical now.
Yeah, it's definitely been a trend that as far as responses to that question that I've asked other previous guests. So thank you for that. So switching gears, and as we kind of come to a smooth landing, what's in store for RoundSquare in the future? What does the future hold?
So we're expanding into Winnipeg. So I think, just trying to expand into other Canadian cities. Definitely Winnipeg is our focus right now, but sort of always looking for different opportunities and exploring those ideas and what we can do. So I think, that would be kind of the main thing. And then our co-founder, Al Karim Devani, he is working on a prop tech company called Chroma that he started recently with some people from former Skip the Dishes
Oh, really?
employee. So really, really tech forward people. And they are doing, a property technology company. So if you actually follow him on LinkedIn, you can kind of learn more about that. But basically what they're doing is trying to improve the landlord-tenant relationship. So I think sort of exploring the ways that technology can help improve the real estate industry and disrupt it, because like obviously RentSync is very involved in that space, but there hasn't really been a major disruption. Like there hasn't been a lot of change in how it actually works. A lot of it's still pretty manual. So I think that that's sort of the next big thing that's happening, and RoundSquare won't be leading that, but we'll definitely be watching that.
Yeah, it's definitely the ecosystem, the real estate ecosystem, for lots of different reasons I've discussed on this podcast, has been pretty much status quo, and it is now, due to a lot of factors, including COVID, starting to change. And there's we definitely welcome, and I think it's a good thing when more companies, more problems are being solved in the prop tech space. So I'll definitely check him out, and who knows,
Yeah.
maybe I could, if he has the time, we'll get him on the podcast.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's just so amazing. I think viewers would really love to hear what he has to say.
So now we're gonna kind of move into what I actually think is my favorite part of the podcast, is the quickfire round, where
Nice.
I'll ask 5 questions, and you'll have about 60
Mm-hmm.
to 90 seconds to answer.
Okay.
Uh, so Lauren, are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so question number 1: what's one thing you wish your phone could do?
So I'm so kind of bad at phones that I feel like anything I say my phone can probably do, and I'm sure that people listening will just send me an app for it. But the main thing would be actually to not have to ever plug in my phone to charge it. I wish it was just always charged. It's always on like 3%. I don't know how it happens, but it's just always like, I'm always just like, oh no, and then I'm plugged into the wall talking. So that would really help me out.
I think that's by design. I think the phone makers are doing that on purpose, but I digress. So question number 2: what's your favorite app or tool?
I was going to say Candy Crush, but I'm trying to be sound cooler than I am. So actually, I play the New York Times crossword every day, and I try and beat my time from the day before. And it's like I do it every single day. I've gotten my mom involved. She texts me her time. We have to like screen cap it. So it's pretty funny. So I'm really, really into that. I feel like it's so like I really love reading and playing a lot of word games, because I think it helps me with my job and kind of keeps my brain, sharp.
I think my wife would have the same answer. I'm talking I'm
Cool.
talking specifically around Candy Crush first. If she was being honest, so
Yeah, it is so fun.
I
I love it.
she seems to think so. So we'll go with that.
Yeah.
The next question is: what's the most misunderstood thing about RoundSquare?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just kind of I think it's a common misconception about developers that, you think of like the big bad developer. And I think that what we're trying to do is pretty different. And I also think that a lot of times people have certain connotations with that word. But if you look at actually the history of where our co-founders, Ashton Devani and Al Karam Devani, they're actually brothers, where they came from, their family history. I mean, they built RoundSquare from like nothing, and they didn't have sort of their family behind them, or they did it on completely on their own. Their parents are refugees. It was hard work, a lot of grit, extreme dedication, passion, and vision. So I think that's a lot of times people don't really know that about them, and hopefully they have shared a lot of aspects of their story. So if you do go on LinkedIn, be sure to follow them. They're really, really inspiring people, and they have a lot to say. So hopefully they can kind of share some more of that story as well. I won't get too far into it, but yeah, I think that's sort of the misconception, is that, being a developer is really hard. You're taking a lot of risk on. you're you have a lot of responsibility socially. So I think that's kind of the most common misconception, I would say.
That's great, and thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
Last question: as a result of COVID, what have you changed your mind about lately?
Ooh, well, I think a lot of it has to do with like sort of boundaries, I guess, that it's sort of okay to say no more. Like I was very go, go, go. And, it's helped me kind of just reset and just sort of relax a little bit and just sort of accept things for how they are. And just really take space for myself and my family and, keep my circle a bit smaller, which has kind of made things actually a little bit easier just as far as like the social aspects and safety wise. But just sort of that being a little bit more low key than I was in the past.
Yeah, again, I think that's something I've heard a lot of people say, and I think, but at the same time, it's not downplaying that. That's I think it's sometimes it's required.
For sure.
The I guess I lied. This last question is: where can people find out a little bit more about RoundSquare?
So you can follow us at RoundSquare_. I've really worked to try to get rid of the underscore, but there's another account with it. So hopefully one day, fingers crossed. So that's on, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. We're pretty active. And then at our website, www.roundsquare.ca. And then my personal, I actually don't have any personal social media, which is a whole other conversation. Maybe the only marketer who doesn't. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Lauren Popadiuk.
Okay, I'll put that in the show notes.
Awesome.
That's it for another episode. Lauren, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, and until next time, keep swimming.
You've reached the end of another episode of Sink or Swim. Make sure to visit us at rentsync.com/podcast to access show notes, key takeaways, and where you can sign up to our newsletter to receive free bonus content. If you found value in this show, please also remember to rate, review, and subscribe. That's this week's episode of Sink or Swim. Don't forget to join us next time for another jam-packed episode. Thanks for listening.